Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That fear whispering that you are running out of time, that the window is closing, that you have already missed it. Silence it. Because God is not done funding your future. He is doing it right now. In this moment. While you sit here wondering if it is too late. The enemy has been working overtime this week for one reason and one reason only. He sees the transfer that heaven just authorized in your name. It all shifts in the next 24 hours. The lack, the limitation, the story you have been telling yourself about why it has not happened yet. But here is what you need to hear. It is not shifting because circumstances finally aligned. It is shifting because of what you have already done. Because of what you refused to give up on, even when everything around you told you to let it go. Think back to that moment this week when the numbers did not make sense. When you checked your account, or looked at your situation, or stared at the gap between where you are and where you need to be, and instead of spiraling, something in you went quiet. Something in you said, "I still trust him." You did not know it then. But that moment of surrender in the silence was not weakness. That was an act of faith so precise, so exact, that heaven registered it as a seed. And seeds do not stay in the ground forever. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written into the calendar of heaven long before you pressed play. You are standing at a threshold and you need to understand what side of it you are about to step onto. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes I am going to hand you the spiritual decree that cancels the spirit of lack over your life. I am going to walk you through the exact moment this week where you unknowingly activated a financial and spiritual release. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration so precise that it seals this season of scarcity shut and locks you into the overflow God already signed off on. Do not leave. Do. Your future self is on the other side of this message begging you to stay, because if you click away now, you will walk back into the same cycle without the key that God just placed at your feet. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been uncertain, it has been pressing. Like something heavy is sitting on your chest and you cannot fully breathe. Maybe you were lying in bed this week, staring at the ceiling, running the same calculations in your mind, trying to figure out how the math is ever going to work, and the numbers just kept coming up short. Or maybe you were sitting alone somewhere quiet, and a wave of shame washed over you, because you feel like you should be further along by now. Like something is wrong with you, like everyone else has figured out something you have not. You feel stuck between what God promised you and what your bank account, your circumstances, your relationships are actually showing you right now. And that gap feels like evidence that you missed something, like you took a wrong turn somewhere and now you are paying for it. And in that gap, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your own thoughts right now. He is telling you that the reason provision has not arrived is because of something you did. Maybe you made a financial decision that felt wrong the moment you made it. Maybe you said yes when you should have said no, or no when you should have said yes. Maybe you walked away from something or someone, and a part of you wonders if that choice cost you everything. The accuser is running that moment on a loop and telling you that because of it, the blessing has been rerouted, that God placed his hand of favor on someone more faithful, that you have disqualified yourself from the funding of heaven. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Philippians 4:19 says, "And my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." According to his riches, not according to your mistakes, not according to your worst week, not according to the moment you stumbled, according to his riches in glory. That word supply in the original language does not mean barely enough. It means to fill completely, to cram full, to make replete. God is not planning to trickle resources in your direction. He has already authorized a release that matches the magnitude of heaven's treasury, not the size of your current problem. The enemy cannot touch that decree. He can only try to talk you out of believing it exists. The pressure you have been feeling is not the weight of divine punishment. It is the weight of divine positioning. It is the sensation of being placed exactly where the provision is about to land. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not in a cycle of lack that is going to repeat itself one more time. You are in a conclusion. The moment you thought was your greatest failure this week, the silence, the surrender, the letting go, that was not the enemy winning. That was you releasing your grip on your own plan long enough for God to hand you his, and his plan has already been funded. And now that you understand where you are standing, it is time to understand what has been standing against you, because this goes deeper than a financial struggle. This goes deeper than a bad season. There is a spiritual structure that has been built around your life, piece by piece, designed not to destroy you outright, but to delay you just long enough that you would begin to dismantle yourself from the inside. This insidious architecture is not always loud or dramatic. Often it is subtle, a silent siege on your spirit and resolve. It's like an invisible net woven with threads of doubt, fear, and past disappointments, designed to entangle your momentum and keep you just short of your breakthrough. The enemy does not need to stop you entirely to bring complete ruin upon you. No, his strategy is far more cunning. He just needs to slow you down, to introduce just enough friction and resistance, just enough fatigue and discouragement, until you decide to stop yourself. He knows that a soul weary from constant striving, from seeing the finish line but never quite reaching it, will eventually give up the race entirely, and the weapon he has been using, the most potent tool in his arsenal, is not failure itself, for failure can often ignite a greater resolve. No, his weapon is far more subtle, far more pervasive. It is familiarity. He has made lack feel so familiar, so normal, so like home, that your very nervous system, the deep primal part of you designed for survival, has started to protect it. That is what nobody tells you. Your physical body, your logical mind, your tender emotions have become accustomed, indeed, have learned to function, even to anticipate, inside the confines of scarcity. You have lived there long enough, navigated its tight corners and sparse landscapes for so long, that abundance, true overflowing provision, feels like the foreign country. It feels alien, intimidating, even dangerous. So, paradoxically, even when genuine provision starts to move in your direction, when the blessing begins to knock at your door, something deep within you flinches. Something in your spirit recoils, perhaps imperceptibly at first, then grows into a quiet apprehension. Something in you instinctively braces for impact, waiting for it to fall apart, for the rug to be pulled out from under you. Something in you whispers, with a deceptive tone of caution, "This is too good to be true. This cannot be real. Don't get your hopes up, for the fall will only be harder." And that flinch, that immediate visceral reaction to impending good, that is not wisdom. It is not spiritual discernment guiding you away from illusion. No, my friend, that flinch is a profound wound that got rewired as instinct, a scar tissue of past disappointments that now interprets blessings as threats. It's the echo of 1,000 tiny heartbreaks, teaching your spirit to guard itself against the very good God intends for you. Think of the children of Israel standing at the edge of the promised land. This wasn't some distant, abstract promise. It was a tangible reality awaiting their embrace. God had already given it to them. The divine decree had already been signed, sealed in the courts of heaven. The territory was already theirs in the spirit, a spiritual title deed held firmly in their Father's hand. All that was required was for them to step across the threshold. But when 10 of the 12 spies came back, their report was steeped not in external threat, but in internal defeat. They declared, "We are like grasshoppers in our own sight." Notice it wasn't, "We are like grasshoppers in the enemy's sight" first. No, the internal lens of inadequacy distorted their entire perception. They had already judged themselves as too small, too weak, too insignificant for the grandeur of God's promise. The land that was flowing with milk and honey, a place of abundant nourishment and rich fertility, felt too large, too overwhelming, too much for what they, in their scarcity-mindedness, believed they deserved. Their self-perception became a cage far stronger than any physical barrier. And so, an 11-day journey, a trek that could have been completed in less than 2 weeks, became 40 years of wandering in circles, a generation lost in the dust of their own unbelief. The distance between where they were physically standing and where God wanted them to be was not geographical, it was profoundly internal. The wilderness, that vast, arid expanse, was not a punishment inflicted upon them. It was a mirror, reflecting back the limitations of their own hearts, their lingering attachments to the familiarity of their Egyptian bondage, their fear of true freedom and divine provision. And God, in his infinite patience and wisdom, had to wait until an entire generation was raised up, a generation whose internal landscape was no longer etched with the memories of slavery, a generation that did not remember Egypt well enough to miss its false sense of security and its meager rations. They needed to forget the taste of the leeks and onions, the comfort of their chains, so they could truly appreciate the sweetness of the promised land. Here is where it goes deeper, my friend, far beyond surface understanding, because you are not in the wilderness because you failed. Let that truth settle deep within your spirit. You are not being held back as a consequence of some fatal flaw or irreversible mistake. No. The reason you find yourself in this season of stripping, of testing, of growth, is because you are actively being made into someone who can steward what is coming without collapsing under its immense weight. The preparation you've been undergoing has not been wasted time, a fruitless detour on your journey. On the contrary, the preparation has been the very point of it all. This wilderness season is a divine crucible, forging within you the character, the resilience, the wisdom, and the depth of spirit necessary to hold the magnitude of the blessing that is already earmarked for your life. It's where the roots grow deep, where your foundation is strengthened, where your faith is purified. But here is what most people miss entirely, the profound truth that often eludes them just before their breakthrough. The preparation, this season of wilderness and refinement, ends the moment you stop needing the wilderness to define you. It ends the moment you actively choose to stop looking back at Egypt, to stop allowing the ghosts of past limitations and familiar struggles to dictate your present reality. It ends the moment you stop rehearsing the narrative of lack, of struggle, of always being behind, as if it were your immutable identity, the permanent script of your life. Because as long as you continue to call yourself someone who has been perpetually struggling, as long as that becomes the dominant story you tell yourself and the world, heaven is patiently waiting for you to change your testimony, to rewrite your narrative before you can truly cross over into your inheritance. Your internal declaration, the profound spoken word of your heart and mouth, has to shift before your external geography, your circumstances, can definitively change. You must speak of yourself as one who is crossing over, one who is blessed, one who is ready, before you fully manifest that reality in your physical world. And this leads us to something that is going to require you to be profoundly honest with yourself, to peer into the quiet corners of your heart, because there is a prayer that many people have been praying, a deeply ingrained pattern of communication with the divine that has, unbeknownst to them, been working actively against their own breakthrough. They have been faithfully, diligently asking God to fix their situation. They have been pleading with the heavens to change their circumstances. They have been crying out for God to move the mountain that stands before them. And let me be clear, these are not wrong prayers. These are earnest cries from a struggling heart, prayers that God hears and responds to with compassion. But underneath those overt prayers, something else has been running. A quieter script, almost subconscious. A deeper, more insidious agreement. It sounds something like this: God, if you fix this, then, and only then, will I finally believe you truly love me. Or, God, if this provision comes through, if this miracle manifests, then I will know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you have not forgotten me. Or even, God, if the numbers change, if the breakthrough arrives, then I will trust you, then my faith will be unshakable. And what sounds, on the surface, like an act of profound faith, is actually a subtle negotiation. What sounds like a humble prayer, an act of spiritual surrender, is actually a condition being placed upon the divine. You have been, perhaps without even realizing it, placing your belief in God's inherent goodness, His unwavering love, His eternal faithfulness, on a transactional trigger, a trigger that only activates when He performs precisely according to your expectations and timeline. And here is the liberating truth. God is not an equation you need to solve. He is not a formula you must balance with your efforts or your suffering. He is not a cosmic vending machine that dispenses blessings upon proper input. He is a Father, a loving, benevolent, all-powerful Father who loves you before the blessing even arrives, within the messy, arduous struggle and on the glorious other side of it. His love is not contingent on your circumstances. It is the very fabric of your being. And until that profound truth settles into your bones, until it moves beyond a mere concept you acknowledge intellectually and becomes a visceral, unshakable conviction, the provision, the overflow, the breakthrough will continue to arrive at a door that your own unbelief, your own conditional faith has been locking from the inside. You are inadvertently holding the key, preventing the very blessings you so desperately desire from entering your life. Stay with me, because what is coming next is the part that profoundly breaks the cycle, the moment that shifts the entire trajectory of your life. The real turning point, the true pivot point of your destiny, is not out there in the external world. It is not found in a changed circumstance, a sudden, miraculous deposit into your bank account, or that long-awaited phone call that finally comes through. While these manifestations are beautiful and desired, they are merely the fruit, not the root, of the transformation. The real turning point is this moment right here, within the quiet sanctuary of your own heart and mind, where you make an unwavering, irrevocable decision. It's the moment you decide, with every fiber of your being, that God is unequivocally good, that you are unconditionally loved, that the blessing, the promised inheritance, is absolutely real, and that the divine decree over your life is signed, sealed, and delivered, not because you can see it with your natural eyes yet, not because the evidence is physically manifest, but precisely because the one who made you, the author of your very existence, said so. That deep internal conviction, forged in the crucible of faith, is the threshold. That unshakable belief, even in the absence of tangible proof, is the crossing. It is the moment you step from the realm of conditional expectation into the boundless domain of absolute trust, where the spiritual reality becomes more real than any physical limitation. This internal shift is the tectonic plate movement that will eventually manifest in your external world. But here is the part no one wants to hear, the challenging truth that often feels uncomfortable, and I need to say it because it is the very thing that will either set you absolutely free propelling you into your destiny, or keep you perpetually stuck on the border of everything God has already prepared and decreed for your life. There is an identity you have been holding on to, perhaps unconsciously, an old skin you have not been willing to bury, a story you have clung to with surprising tenacity. It is the identity of the one who is always waiting, the one who is always almost there, perpetually on the verge of breakthrough but never quite reaching it. The one who has the testimony of faithfully believing, of earnestly praying, but not yet receiving the fullness of the promise. And somewhere along the way, this identity, this narrative of perpetual deferment, became subtly spiritual. It got dressed up in the beautiful garments of patience and humility and long-suffering. And let me be absolutely clear, these are indeed precious fruits of the Spirit. Do not hear me wrong. True patience is a divine virtue, a steadfast endurance. Humility is the fertile soil from which all true blessings grow. Long-suffering is the powerful capacity to endure hardship with grace. But here is the critical distinction. Patience is a posture for the journey, an active, hopeful expectation as you move forward. It is not a permanent address where you resign yourself to an endless state of delay. Humility is the recognition of God's sovereignty and grace, the fertile ground that grows the blessing, not the reason you never actually hold it in your hands. There is a version of what appears to be spiritual waiting that is, in reality, a subconscious agreement with delay, a subtle resignation that this state of almost is your destined reality. There is a version of long-suffering that has crossed the invisible line from genuine God-honoring endurance into a quiet, insidious expectation of continued suffering, a spiritualized fatalism that prevents you from stepping into joy and abundance. And God is asking you tonight, with divine love and absolute clarity, to lay that down. Not your faith in Him, not your trust in His goodness, absolutely not. But the deep-seated attachment to the story of the one who never quite gets there, the narrative of the perpetually struggling, the almost there believer. This attachment, this old identity, is the last barrier to your crossing. Because here is what heaven has always seen when it looks at you. From the moment of your conception, through every trial and triumph, every stumble and every soaring moment, heaven does not see the version of you that has been running out of time, frantically trying to catch up. It does not see the version that made the wrong decision at the wrong moment, trapped in the regret of past mistakes. It does not see the version that is behind schedule, broken by circumstances, and barely holding on by a thread. No, when heaven looks at you, it always sees the finished version. It sees the one who has already walked through this season, who has traversed the wilderness, and who has emerged on the other side, not just surviving, but thriving, carrying a powerful, undeniable testimony of God's faithfulness. Heaven sees the one who, when the numbers did not make sense, when the logic of the world screamed impossibility, stood firm in the gap, refusing to let go of the divine promise. It sees the one whose courageous surrender this week, that quiet act of yielding your will and your worries to God, became a potent seed that heaven is now about to multiply in ways so exponential, so miraculous, that they will make you forget you were ever counting the cost, ever agonizing over the resources. That version of you, the victorious, whole, abundant, and testifying version, is not some far-off hypothetical future version that might come to be. That version of you is who you have always been, intrinsically, inherently, in the eyes of the one who formed you in your mother's womb, who knit you together with divine purpose and destiny. You are seen in your fullness, in your glory, in your already achieved victory by the eternal architect of your soul. Coming up, the one thing that will seal this revelation into your spirit and make it impossible for the enemy to take it back. Do not move. But before we get there, there is one more crucial layer, a profound insight that many people never reach because they become disheartened, they get discouraged, and they click away right before the breakthrough is about to unfold. So hear me deeply, intimately when I say this. The very fact that you are still here, listening to these words, engaging with this truth, is not a mere coincidence. The fact that you have stayed through every word of this message, even when parts of it felt challenging or uncomfortable, is itself an undeniable act of faith. You could have easily walked away, dismissed it, told yourself you have heard all this before, that it's just another spiritual platitude. But something deep within your spirit, an undeniable whisper from the divine, knew there was still something profoundly vital waiting for you on the other side of your staying, on the other side of your perseverance. And that something was absolutely right. Here is the unexpected truth, the reframe that will shift your entire perspective on everything you have just received. The reason the provision, the blessing, the breakthrough has felt so slow, so agonizingly delayed, is not because God was withholding it from you out of stinginess or neglect. No, my beloved friend, it is because He was protecting you. There is a version of the blessing, a raw, unrefined form of the overflow that could have arrived earlier, perhaps even years ago, and paradoxically, it would have broken you. Not because you are inherently weak, but because it would have landed in soil that was simply not yet ready, not yet cultivated, not yet robust enough to hold it. The roots of your character were not deep enough. The vessels of your integrity and resilience were not yet formed enough. Your identity in Christ was not yet settled enough to withstand the immense pressure, the sudden shift, or the profound responsibility that accompanies true abundance. And a blessing that arrives before its appointed time, before the internal ground is prepared, does not build a lasting life. It often exposes what is still unstable, what is still fragile, what needs further strengthening. God has not been stingy with you. He has been surgical, precise in His timing and His cultivation. He has been patiently, lovingly, meticulously cultivating the very ground of who you are, strengthening your inner being, deepening your spiritual roots, so that when the glorious overflow finally comes, when the floodgates open, it does not leak out through the cracks of who you used to be, through old patterns of fear, scarcity, or unworthiness. Instead, it stays. It becomes firmly rooted. It multiplies exponentially. It becomes not just a personal blessing, but a generational legacy. What felt like an agonizing delay was actually a profound act of depth being built into you, a resilience and wisdom that no one, no circumstance, no external force can ever take away from you. It was divine preparation for a blessing that will truly last. And here is the final pivotal thing, the ultimate revelation, the thing that I believe you came here for, deep down in your spirit, even if you did not consciously know it when you pressed play and began this journey with me. The spirit of lack, the pervasive sense of never enough, the invisible ceiling that has been operating in your life, did not, in many cases, begin with you. For many of you listening right now, it is an inherited agreement, a deeply ingrained generational contract that was signed, sealed, and unknowingly passed down through the bloodline long before you were even born, by people who survived by believing, with every fiber of their being, that there was never truly enough, that scarcity was the natural order of things, that abundance was a fleeting dream or an impossible luxury. And their profound survival instinct, born of hardship and necessity, became your default setting. Their psychological and spiritual ceiling, the invisible limit they placed on what was possible, became, by default, your sky. And you have been working so incredibly hard, believing so fiercely, confessing so diligently, and yet, despite all your efforts, something subtle but powerful keeps pulling you back. keeping you just shy of the full manifestation of your breakthrough. It's not because God is not faithful. His faithfulness is eternal and unwavering. It's not because the divine decree over your life is not real. It is as real as the breath in your lungs. But it is because you have been, without realizing it, fighting a battle in the present that has its deep, insidious root in the past, in the inherited agreements and unconscious patterns of those who came before you. Tonight, in this sacred moment, that contract is utterly cancelled. Not by your own strenuous effort, not by your perfection, not by your flawless execution of spiritual principles, but by the invincible, all-powerful blood of the covenant that was established before the very foundation of the world, the covenant sealed by Jesus Christ, which declares unequivocally that you are an heir, not a beggar, that you are a receiver, not just a believer who merely acknowledges truth, but one who actively opens their hands to accept the divine inheritance. That what was broken, what was limited, what was lost in the generations before you was already fully accounted for, already completely redeemed, already covered, forgiven, and made whole in the finished victorious work of the cross. The cycle of lack, the generational pattern of scarcity, does not have to continue. It stops here. It stops with you. Tonight, by the power of the finished work of Christ, it stops with you. Place your hand on your chest and declare this with me. I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not disqualified by my worst week or my worst decision or the silence that felt like absence. I release every agreement I have made with lack, with delay, with the lie that I have missed my window. I release every inherited belief that there is never enough, that provision is always just out of reach, that I have to earn what God has already freely given. I cancel every generational contract that kept abundance just beyond my grasp. I receive the decree that heaven signed over my life. I receive the overflow that has already been authorized. I declare that my surrender this week was a seed, and I will see the harvest. I declare that the preparation is complete, and I am crossing over. I am not the one who is always waiting. I am the one who has arrived. I am seen. I am chosen. I am funded by heaven. And everything that was meant for me is already in motion. This season of scarcity is sealed shut, and I walk forward now, not hoping, not wishing, not negotiating, but knowing it is done. If this message broke something open in you tonight, do not let it be a moment that fades by morning. Write the declaration down. Speak it again when you wake up. And if you know someone who has been pressing through a season of lack and delay and almost giving up, send this to them right now. Not because you have to, but because you know what it felt like to almost click away. And you know what was waiting on the other side of staying.